Every person on this list has been terrified. The Navy SEAL. The Buddhist nun. The psychotherapist. The guy who got rejected on purpose, on camera, 100 days in a row. None of them found a way to make fear disappear. They found something better. These 10 books are what they found. And the number one pick isn't a fear book at all. I ranked these by how deeply they change your actual relationship with fear, not by how many copies they sold. And for each one, I'm going to break down the actual ideas inside. Not just the title and a one-line summary. Number 10. Dare by Barry McDonagh. McDonagh's core argument is that anxiety doesn't feed on the thing you're afraid of. It feeds on your fear of the fear itself. His key concept is the dare response. A 4-step reaction designed to interrupt what he calls the shock-panic cycle. Diffuse. Meeting the anxious sensation with mockery instead of alarm, essentially saying is that all you've got. Allow. Letting the feeling sit there uninvited instead of bracing against it. Run toward it. Deliberately leaning into the physical sensation instead of trying to escape the room or the moment. Engage. Redirecting your attention onto a real task in the world instead of monitoring your own heartbeat. A concrete example he gives. Someone feeling the first flicker of a panic attack on a train instinctively tenses up and scans their body for more symptoms. And that scanning itself manufactures the very symptoms they're afraid of. Whereas someone who greets the sensation with indifference watches it burn out on its own within minutes. What makes this book different from something like The Gift of Fear is that McDonagh is treating fear as a false alarm to be diffused, while de Becker treats fear as a signal that's often worth listening to. 2 books solving opposite problems that both get labeled about fear. Link to grab this one is in the description, timestamped below. Number 9. The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. De Becker's core argument, built from decades consulting on violence prevention, is that real fear and manufactured worry are 2 completely different signals, and most people have lost the ability to tell them apart. His key concept is true fear. An instant, wordless survival response triggered by something you've perceived but haven't consciously registered yet. Versus everyday anxiety, which loops endlessly and rarely demands the immediate action true fear does. A concrete example he gives. A woman lets a stranger help carry her groceries upstairs even though something feels faintly wrong. And he shows how that stranger used specific manipulation tactics. Unsolicited promises like "I won't come in, I'll just leave the bags." Forced teaming, acting like the 2 of them are already a unit facing a shared problem. And that the flicker of unease she talked herself out of was actually her intuition doing its job perfectly. What makes this book different from Dare is that McDonagh is teaching you to dismiss the alarm bells of everyday anxiety, while de Becker is teaching you to never again talk yourself out of the alarm bells that are protecting your life. Link is in the description. Number 8. Rejection Proof by Jia Jiang. Jiang's core argument comes from an experiment as blunt as its title. He spent 100 days deliberately seeking out rejection on purpose, on camera, to see if the sting would fade with exposure. His key concept is that rejection isn't a verdict on your worth. It's usually a reflection of the other person's constraints, mood, or policy in that exact moment. And the fear of it is almost always worse than the actual event. A concrete example he gives. On day 1 he asked a stranger at an office building if he could borrow $100 and was refused within seconds and walked away shaken. But by asking a Krispy Kreme employee for 5 donuts arranged in the shape of the Olympic rings, he discovered that simply asking why instead of accepting the first no sometimes turns a rejection into a genuine yes. Because most people say no reflexively before they've actually considered the request. What makes this book different from The Gift of Fear is that de Becker is teaching you to trust the fear that protects you from real danger, while Jiang is teaching you to override the fear that has nothing to do with danger at all, just social discomfort dressed up as risk. Grab it using the link below. Number 7. Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Gilbert's core argument is that creative fear never goes away, no matter how successful or experienced you become, so waiting for it to disappear before you start is a trap. Her key concept is treating fear like a passenger on a road trip. It's allowed to come along. It's allowed to say whatever it wants from the back seat. But it doesn't get a vote on the destination. And it absolutely never gets to touch the map. A concrete example she gives. She describes an idea for a novel that seemed to leave her when she stopped pursuing it, and how it later appeared, nearly identically in plot and structure, in a novel written by a friend who had no knowledge of her abandoned project, which she uses to argue that ideas move through the world looking for a willing collaborator, and fear is simply the toll booth every collaborator has to pass through. What makes this book different from Rejection Proof is that Jiang is desensitizing you to a specific social outcome through repeated exposure, while Gilbert is asking you to permanently change your relationship to fear itself, treating it as an unwelcome but harmless passenger rather than something to defeat or wait out. Links in the description. Number 6. Emotional Agility by Susan David. David's core argument, drawn from her research as a Harvard psychologist, is that people get hooked by their emotions, treating a feeling like I'm afraid as a command or a fixed identity instead of passing data. Her key concept is emotional granularity, naming a feeling with real precision, like apprehensive or unsettled instead of a vague bad, which she found gives the brain enough distance to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting automatically. A concrete example she cites from her research. Workers who habitually suppress or ignore uncomfortable emotions show higher rates of burnout and worse decision-making over time, while workers who simply acknowledge a feeling by name, without judging it or acting on it immediately, recover their composure far faster and make clearer choices under pressure. What makes this book different from Dare is that McDonagh gives you an active 4-step technique to physically move through a panic response, while David is building a broader psychological skill, naming and holding any difficult emotion, fear included, without either suppressing it or being controlled by it. Link is in the description. Number 5. Playing Big by Tara Moore. Moore's core argument is that the voice most people mistake for realistic self-assessment before a big opportunity is actually a specific internal character with one job: protecting you from the risk of being seen, not giving you accurate information. Her key concept is the distinction between the inner critic, which speaks in absolutes like "who do you think you are?" and the inner mentor, a visualization of your own wiser future self that she has readers consult directly before big decisions. A concrete example she gives. Women in her workshops repeatedly wait to feel fully ready before applying for a role or pitching an idea. And she shows that simply recognizing the critic's exact phrasing as a repeating script, rather than a fresh and credible warning, is often enough to act anyway while the fear is still present. What makes this book different from Emotional Agility is that David is teaching a general skill for naming and holding any emotion, while Moore is targeting one very specific fear: the fear of visibility and ambition, and giving it a named internal opponent instead of treating it as generic anxiety. Grab the link in the description. Number 4. The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Ruiz's core argument, drawn from Toltec wisdom passed through his family, is that most adult fear was installed in childhood, through a lifetime of rules, punishments, and rewards he calls the dream of the planet, and that an internal judge, paired with an internal victim, keeps that fear enforced long after the original authority figures are gone. His key concept is the second agreement. Don't take anything personally. The idea that other people's words and reactions are a reflection of their own internal dream, not a verdict on your worth, so their opinion of you was never actually about you in the first place. A concrete example he gives. A person insulted by an angry stranger on the street feels wounded only because they've agreed, internally, that the insult says something true about them. And Ruiz argues that the exact same words, heard by someone who has broken that agreement, would simply pass through without leaving a mark, because they'd correctly locate the anger as belonging entirely to the stranger. What makes this book different from Playing Big is that Moore is helping you act despite a specific internal critic voice tied to ambition. while Ruiz is offering a broader, almost spiritual reframe of where fear of judgment comes from in the first place, tracing it all the way back to childhood conditioning. Links below. Number 3. Fear, Essential Wisdom for Getting Through the Storm by Thich Nhat Hanh. Nhat Hanh's core argument, drawn from decades as a Zen Buddhist teacher, is that most fear comes from forgetting impermanence. Clinging to the idea of a fixed self, a fixed body, and fixed circumstances, when everything, without exception, is always in motion. His key concept is meeting fear directly through mindful breathing, treating it the way a mother holds a crying baby. Not by fighting it, silencing it, or pushing it away, but by embracing it gently until it naturally calms on its own. A concrete example he tells: Vietnamese refugees crossing the ocean by boat, facing storms and pirates with no guarantee of survival. And how those aboard who practiced calm, present breathing rather than succumbing to collective panic were consistently the ones who made clearer decisions and helped others survive the crossing. What makes this book different from the Four Agreements is that Ruiz is reframing the social and psychological roots of fear, while Nhat Hanh is offering a direct, physical practice for sitting with fear itself, moment to moment, breath to breath, regardless of where the fear originally came from. Link is in the description. Number 2. The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Singer's core argument is that there are two separate things most people have fused into one: the constant inner voice narrating and defending your life, and the quiet awareness underneath it that is actually you. His key concept is the protective shell, a wall built from every past hurt you never fully released, which the inner voice keeps guarding at all costs. And fear, in his framework, is simply what happens the instant that shell feels threatened. A concrete example he gives is what he calls the thorn in the heart, where instead of removing an old, unprocessed pain, most people build an entire structure of avoidance around it. Choosing careers, relationships, and even friendships specifically designed never to touch that one spot. When the far simpler solution, he argues, was always to remove the thorn itself so nothing external can press on it again. What makes this book different from Fear by Thich Nhat Hanh is that Nhat Hanh is teaching a breathing practice to sit calmly with fear as it arises, while Singer is making a more radical claim underneath that practice: that you are not the frightened voice at all, only the silent witness capable of observing it. Link is below. And number 1. When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. Unlike every other book on this list, this one isn't offering a technique, a formula, or even a definition of fear at all. It's a Buddhist teacher's meditation on what she calls groundlessness, the plain fact that nothing was ever as solid or controllable as we needed it to be. Chodron's central claim is that the fear underneath every other fear is the fear of groundlessness itself, and that almost every human strategy, ambition included, is a quiet attempt to manufacture the illusion of solid ground where none actually exists. Her key concept is leaning into the sharp points, moving deliberately toward the exact discomfort you'd normally flee from, instead of numbing it, explaining it away, or armoring against it. Paired with what she calls might try, an unconditional friendliness toward yourself that includes the frightened, embarrassing, and unfinished parts you'd normally hide. A concrete image she returns to is the training of a spiritual warrior, who doesn't fight fear as an enemy to be defeated, but instead becomes so familiar and so gentle with it, through repeated exposure, that fear eventually loses its ability to command a retreat. What makes this book the definitive number 1 on this list is that every other title here is teaching you a method to manage, diffuse, or outgrow fear. Chodron is arguing that fear was never the problem to solve in the first place. It's simply what the ground feels like the moment you stop pretending it was ever solid. Link is in the description. The number 1 pick proves something simple. Fear isn't the opponent. It's the ground itself. The instant you stop demanding it hold perfectly still. Which of these have you read, and which one changed how you think about fear? Drop it in the comments. Next video, 10 books that will completely rewire how you think about anger.